So, we now know that the Clinton campaign understood in real time that Hillary Clinton was lying about her private email server. According to campaign chairman John Podesta, Hillary lawyer David Kendall, former State Department Chief of Staff Cheryl Mills, and former senior advisor Philippe Reines sure weren't forthcoming on the facts here. It's a direct quote. One of Hillary's friends, activist Neera Tandon, replied, quote, "This is a Cheryl's special, like Cheryl Mills. Know you love her, but this stuff is like her Achilles heel, or kryptonite. She can't say no to this bleep. Why didn't they get this stuff out like 18 months ago? So crazy. I guess I know the answer. They wanted to get away with it," unquote. These are Hillary's allies. Tandon rightly pointed out the Clinton campaign should have released all the emails immediately if they wanted to avoid scrutiny. But, as always, they hid the truth because they are pathological, paranoid liars. And the lies extend all the way up the chain. According to an email from Cheryl Mills, President Obama was lying when he said in 2015 that he learned about Hillary's private emails, quote, the same time everybody else learned it, through news reports. Mills wrote, quote, "We need to clean this up. He has emails from her. They do not say state.gov. Obama's press secretary, Josh Earnest, came out days after Obama's lies, fibbing again, quote, "The point the president was making is not he didn't know Secretary Clinton's email address, he did, but he wasn't aware of the details of how that email address and that server had been set up, or how Secretary Clinton and her team were planning to comply with the Federal Records Act." Meanwhile, ABC News reports the State Department still hasn't gotten back to the National Archives and Records Administration, called NARA, on their request for records from months ago for emails concerning Hillary tech aide Brian Pagliano. NARA informed the State Department on July 18th to explain why there were no Pagliano emails. He was obligated by law to turn over those emails. 3 months later, nothing. Zip, nada. They've turned over nothing. Hillary Clinton has used the government as her personal cover-up service for decades. She did it while she was in the White House with her charlatan husband. She did it at the State Department. Is there any doubt she would pervert the executive branch to her own purposes as President of the United States? I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Alrighty, so we are back from the last of the Jewish holidays, so we should not have any breaks now between now and the election, which is 13 long, endless days away. Time is now moving backwards as we approach the election, because that's what happens in horror movies. You just feel that horrible feeling creep up your neck, and the movie seems to last twice as long as you thought it would because it's so frightening. Yes, that is where we now are in this election cycle. 13 days until Armageddon. But before we get to that, a positive note from Birch Gold, our friends over at Birch Gold. If you are afraid of the apocalypse, or just afraid that the economy is overblown, that we're due for another recession, that the stock market and real estate market are overvalued, because they are, you might want to give my friends over at Birch Gold Group a call. You go to birchgold.com/Ben, and they will inform you how you can shift your IRA into precious metals if that's something you're interested in doing. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, and they give a 16-page comprehensive kit on how gold and silver can protect your assets. So get in touch with them at birchgold.com/Ben to get that no-cost, no-obligation kit, and ask all of your questions before you invest. I always encourage everybody to do full research before you invest in anything, but part of your portfolio should be in precious metals as a hedge against inflation and against instability in the stock market and real estate market. My friends at Birch Gold can help you out. birchgold.com/Ben. Okay, so lots to get to. We will, of course, get to Newt Gingrich versus Megyn Kelly, the only thing anyone wants to talk about today. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, some stories that the mainstream media obviously don't want to talk about. The first of this is that Obamacare is absolutely collapsing. So in 38 states across the country, the premiums have risen by a significant amount, according to the Associated Press, as much as 25% in some states. It was built to be this way. Okay, we all know that it was going to be this way. As I mentioned last week when we talked about Obamacare's rising premiums, Obamacare was built on the great lie that young people were going to pay for insurance they don't need, and that was going to be used to redistribute the insurance coverage to older people and to people who couldn't afford it. That was the idea. Turns out young people just said, screw it, I'll pay the fine. And so that's what they've been doing. And it also turns out that the other part of Obamacare was that Medicaid would be expanded in the states, sponsored by the federal government. A lot of conservative states said, we're not going to expand Medicaid because the federal government is promising to pay it right now, but they won't be paying it in 5 years, and then we'll end up picking up the tab for this expanded Medicaid. And so a lot of people are not on insurance, and that means that the insurance companies have been sort of forced to cover a lot of people who are in poor health, and the insurance premiums are skyrocketing. So people are not being covered in a lot of these states, plus the insurance premiums are up, so it's the worst of all possible worlds. And this is how it was built to be. Obamacare's architect was on TV over the weekend and over the past few days, and he said that the Obamacare premium increases are going to be severe. This is Ezekiel Emanuel, I believe.
Jake, totally agree with you. There's 1 million people for whom this is going to be severe, or uncomfortable. And for a million people, we need to find other solutions.
Zeke, you just cherry-pick some states. Let me cherry-pick one of my own. Arizona, premiums are going to jump 116. They're going to jump 116%.
Yes, and the question is, what were they before and what are they after? And look, I think it's a real problem there. We need to get more people in at 116% increase.
We need to get more people in. So how are we going to do that? We're going to force people to buy insurance. I love it when Obamacare advocates say, we have all these new people who are buying insurance. Right, because you're putting the government gun to their head and demanding they buy insurance. If I pass a law saying everybody has to buy a car sales will go up, even if it's a crappy car. The premiums are going up dramatically because part of this, and Republicans do this routine too, when they say that we need insurance companies to cover pre-existing conditions, that's not insurance coverage. That's health care. Okay, I don't buy fire insurance after my house burns down, because no fire insurance company would sell me an insurance policy. An insurance policy is just a bet. You're betting that your house won't burn down, and they're betting that you're betting that your house will burn down, and they're betting your house won't burn down. Once you already have cancer, okay, you're not betting anymore that you won't get cancer. You know, they're paying you. They're just, if you can't pay in $750 a month or $1,000 or $1,500 a month and take out $10,000 a month, that's not insurance coverage. That's a subsidy. In any case, Obamacare is collapsing. It was designed to collapse. So naturally, Democrats are trying to blame Republicans over all of this. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the former DNC chair, who's now been replaced with the execrable Donna Brazile, she says that it's time to sit with Republicans, Jar Jar Binks of the Democratic Party.
We need to sit down together, like Hillary Clinton has said over and over, with Republicans across the table and iron out those kinks. And that's what we're committed to do, so we can make sure that we can continue to improve upon a plan that has given 20 million people health insurance and given people like me, as a breast cancer survivor who lives with a pre-existing condition, the chance not to worry about being dropped or denied coverage like we'd had to worry about before.
Okay, first of all, again, if you had a pre-existing condition, that's awful, but there's a reason you're paying a higher premium because your risks are higher, just like any other insurance scheme. Okay, that's just the way insurance works. The idea that they're going to put it on Republicans now, we need to work together to correct the system, you take your system and you shove it. I mean, we're not interested in correcting your crappy system. Your system should implode, and we should get rid of your system, and we should replace it with something better, obviously. Now, Donald Trump is campaigning on this. He's now decided that he's going to kind of split his time between not campaigning and campaigning. So today, he's over in Washington, D.C., pushing his Trump hotel at a ribbon cutting, which is what normal presidential candidates do, I'm informed. But he's also tweeting, he has, to his credit, he has tweeted in all capital letters, repeal and replace Obamacare. So I guess that's sufficient for that sort of coverage. But Trump is splitting his time in this campaign, so he is spending some time hitting Hillary Clinton. He's hitting her about her email server as well. Here's Donald Trump hitting Hillary about the new revelations about her email server.
He found out Hillary Clinton was using her personal email when he saw it on the news. Oh, that's nice. But Cheryl Mills, Clinton's chief of staff, the State Department, replied, quote, listen to this, "We need to clean this up. He has the emails from her. They do not say state.gov. They don't say it." In other words, Mills was saying Obama, he had to know that Hillary was using an illegal server, but he claimed otherwise. So that means Obama is now into the act. And now I understand that despite his hatred of the Clintons, because I know one thing, Bill hates him, but despite his hatred, now I understand why he pushed her.
And that's good, Trump. And this is exactly right. Okay, the fact is that Obama was complicit in the private email cover-up. There's a report today that the DOJ, the Department of Justice, they charted the political donations of the DOJ, and it turned out that 97% of all political donations in this cycle from employees of the DOJ went to Hillary Clinton. You guessed it, of course, because that's the way this entire routine works. I mean, these corrupt connections have been around. The Clintons is nothing new for the Clintons. So Republicans have a right to be upset that that's not being covered more, obviously. That doesn't mean that they're very good at this. So now we get to the story that everybody's talking about because, again, part of this is, yes, the media would prefer to cover Donald Trump's scandals than Hillary's scandals. Part of it is that it's much easier to wrap your mind around Donald Trump grabs women by the bleep than it is to talk about Cheryl Mills and Philip Raines and try to explain who all these people are and how they're all connected. You have to connect all the dots, and that's a little bit more complicated. The media doesn't want to do that work. To their credit, the media is covering today these new revelations about Hillary's email server and Cheryl Mills and John Podesta. It was on the front page of the Washington Post. Take that for what it's worth. But, we can be frustrated with, we can be frustrated with the level of media coverage. That doesn't mean that the Trump campaign is doing a good job with this. So if Trump were on the stump all the time, and all he was talking about was what we just saw, we'd be looking at a much better Trump, a much more solid Trump, a Trump who is looking to win. But the reality of the situation now, and this is where we get into telling uncomfortable truths, because that's what we do on the program, and I'll talk about why it's uncomfortable for so many people in a minute. The uncomfortable truth is that Donald Trump is not running for president anymore. He's running for the post-presidency civil war so that he can start his Trump TV routine. He is. I said this back in August, that this was his plan, that his plan B was that if he started to lose. He knows that's the case now, so he's just throwing red meat to his base, and he's throwing his surrogates out there to throw red meat to his base. Because the stuff that he's doing now is not conducive to him winning an election. Trump plan A was win the election. Trump plan B was, if you can't win the election, then start stumping for the base. Throw red meat to the base. Even if it means I do worse in the election, but I lock up my base to pay me $10 a month at Trump TV, then that's what I'll do. And that's the direction that Trump has been moving over the past several weeks, and that's certainly been true in the last 24 hours as well. Now, a lot of people don't want to hear that. A lot of people, when I say that sort of thing, they say, well, don't you understand how bad Hillary is? That's a non sequitur. As you know, I just spent 15 minutes ripping into Hillary. She's the most corrupt person to run for high office in my lifetime. Hillary Clinton is an abomination. She's going to be a terrible president. She's going to corrupt the executive branch. Okay, but that's a non sequitur. Donald Trump doesn't want to win. The comeback is not Hillary's awful. I know Hillary's awful. I'm not even making the case right now you shouldn't vote for Trump. I'm just pointing out to you so you don't get suckered that if Donald Trump loses because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump loses because he's not interested in winning anymore. He cares less about winning than you do. He cares less about stopping Hillary Clinton than you do. He is only interested in one thing right now, and that is fighting with his own party and fighting with the media so that he can get people to buy into his brand after he loses badly. If he didn't care about those things, if he really wanted to win, he'd be focusing on his ground game. He wouldn't have shut down his major fundraisers with the RNC, which is what he's done. He has no ground game in any of the major states. Now, all that is an indicator that the Trump campaign is not interested in winning. The Trump campaign is interested in the civil war that comes after, that begins November 9th. And the reason I'm talking about that right now, the reason it's important to talk about that right now before the election, is because otherwise what's going to happen is Trump is going to lie all the way up to the election that this is close. His people are going to go out there and tell you that it's really, really close if only Trump hadn't been stabbed in the back. And people are going to be shocked. They're going to be in despair November 9th. And I think two things. One, you shouldn't be in despair November 9th. The battle isn't over. You can lose the battle and still win the war. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. And point number two, if you're so shocked that Trump lost, you're more likely to fall into his next con, which is I lost because I was backstabbed. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. He was a bad candidate. He's run a bad campaign. He's continuing to run a bad campaign right now. Now, the reason, by the way, I say that the battle could be lost, but the war isn't, is Hillary Clinton will be a deeply unpopular president. There's likely to be a recession on her watch. There's a recession in this country every 8 to 10 years. That means the last one was in 2007, 2008. It is now 2016. Good shot that the economy, which is inflated by the Fed, tanks under Hillary Clinton's watch. In off-year elections, the incumbent party does very poorly. So there's a good shot that in 4 years, Republicans come back. It's a bad 4 years, but Republicans come back and do something decent in 4 years if they don't go to war. The danger here is that Trump sends them to war. Okay, all of that is lead up to this clip of Newt Gingrich with Megyn Kelly last night. Because when it comes to Newt Gingrich versus Megyn Kelly, you have to understand something. You can agree with Newt Gingrich, but this exchange wins Newt Gingrich 0 points with the voters who matter. Okay, it wins him subscribers to New Trump TV, but it doesn't do anything for the actual election. Nobody watches this exchange, and then they say, you know what, now I'm voting Trump. So here's the exchange between Gingrich and Kelly that made all sorts of headlines last night.
A sexual predator, that is...
He's not a sexual predator.
Okay,
you
that's
can't
your
say
opinion.
That.
I'm not taking a position on
that
it.
Statement.
I'm not
sick
taking a
and
position
tired of people like you using language that's inflammatory, that's not true.
Excuse me, Mr. Speaker.
Donald
you have
Trump
no idea whether it's true or not. What we know is that there are at least...
Neither do you.
That's right, and I'm not taking a position on it, unlike
yes, you are. When you use the words, you took a position.
So what
I think
I said
it's very
is
unfair of you to do that, Megyn.
Incorrect.
I think that is exactly the bias people are upset by. When you want to go back through the tapes of your show recently, you are fascinated with sex, and you don't care about public policy. Now, that's
really?
what I get out of watching you tonight. I want to hear your words, Bill Clinton, sexual predator. I dare you. Say Bill Clinton, sexual predator.
Mr. Speaker,
disbarred by the Arkansas bar. Disbarred by the Arkansas bar. $850,000 penalty.
Excuse me, sir. We on the Kelly File have covered the Clinton matter as well. We've hosted Kathleen Willey. We've covered the examples of him being accused as well, but he's not on the ticket. And the polls also show that the American public is less interested in the deeds.
Okay, so I'll give you the full analysis of this in just a second. First, we have to say hello to our friends over at Ring.com. So, if you're somebody who's afraid of home burglary, I tend to be kind of paranoid about this because I have a lot of hate mail, but if you're somebody who's worried about home burglary or somebody coming to your house who ought not be there, Ring.com is for you. Very often what happens is people ring the doorbell to see if you're home, and then they burglarize the place. What Ring.com does is, you can see it has the camera up top. Somebody rings the doorbell. It rings through to your phone. You can reply to them directly, and that means whether you're home or not home, you can give the impression that you're home. You can also see who's at your door. Right now, they have an advanced motion detection technology to protect the property called the Ring of Security Kit, which means the Ring video doorbell for the front door, and a Ring stick-up cam, which is a wireless weatherproof HD camera. Again, we have a lot of great advertisers. This is one of the ones where I actually spent my own money to go out and get extra Ring products because I believe in the product so much. Ring.com is a way that you can keep your home safe. My wife is paranoid about this kind of stuff, and so am I. And so we've bought a bunch of their products. It's a great product, and I highly recommend it. Right now, if you go to ring.com/Ben, you get $150 off of the Ring of Security Kit, which is a pretty hefty discount. So $150 off the Ring of Security Kit, ring.com/Ben for $150 off your kit. Great product. I highly recommend it. Okay, so when it comes to this clip, Gingrich and Kelly, I'm just going to point out before I say, what this clip means. If you're a Trump supporter, you think that Gingrich did great. If you're not a Trump supporter, you think Gingrich made an ass of himself here. That really is what it comes down to here. No minds were changed. No minds were changed. Except the minds of women who may watch this and say, really? Newt Gingrich, thrice married Newt Gingrich, the guy who cheated on his second wife with his third wife, that guy is saying to Megyn Kelly, a woman, that she's obsessed with sex because she is covering sexual assault allegations against Donald Trump? Now, you may think that that's awful that people think that way. Maybe it is. That's also reality. Okay, the reality of the situation is that right now, Donald Trump, according to ABC News, Washington Post polls, is losing women by a margin of 55 to 35. By contrast, Mitt Romney lost women by 12. Donald Trump is losing women by 20. Okay, among white women, Donald Trump is losing 62 to 30. Mitt Romney won white women, white college-educated women. Trump is losing them. He's destroying an entire generation of female voters for the Republican Party because of stuff like this. So whether you think Gingrich is right, and I think he's partially right, and I think he's partially wrong, you have to acknowledge that there are costs to this kind of stuff politically. I'm not talking about how it should be. I'm not talking about what's true or not. I'm talking about the reality of politics on the ground. This sort of stuff does not help Donald Trump, and Gingrich knows that, and Trump knows that, and they all know this, but they're still pushing this kind of stuff, which means there's another agenda here. There's another agenda here, okay? This has nothing to do with Gingrich being right or Gingrich being wrong. But here's the thing. When I speak the language of reality, again, that sort of iron curtain goes down. People don't want to hear it because it's not November 9th yet, so we can't operate in the realm of reality. We have to have hope that Trump is going to win. We have to assume that Trump is on the verge of winning. We have to say that Hillary's really bad. She is. She's awful. That has nothing to do with the point that I'm making. It has nothing to do with the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is, if you want to run an effective campaign that doesn't damage conservatism and the Republican brand in the future, this is not how it's done. I'll explain more about that in just a second over at dailywire.com. This is why you should subscribe, so you can watch live at dailywire.com. Check us out there, $8 a month, and that means that you can also be part of the Daily Wire mailbag, which you do. And right now, if you get an annual subscription, then you get a free signed copy of my new novel, True Allegiance, which has been doing really well on Amazon. It comes out in print on November 1st, so that should be a big deal. It's getting good reviews. Conservative Review just did a really nice review of it. Town Hall did a great review of it. Alan West and Coulter's, both of whom support Trump, really liked the book, thought it was a great book. You can get a free copy signed by me at dailywire.com when you do a subscription, a full year subscription, and become part of the team that brings you the most popular conservative podcast available in the United States today.